Little girl reveals millionaire's wife's secret, but everyone is shocked by what they discover. Rate my story from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The sweltering afternoon heat made the asphalt of the big city shimmer like a mirage as the 30-year-old widowed millionaire drove his luxury car through the busy downtown streets. His brown eyes, still marked by the sadness of his recent loss, absent-mindedly scanned the elegant storefronts when something in the crowd inexplicably caught his attention. There, leaning against the dirty wall of an office building, was a figure so small and fragile that for a moment he thought it was an abandoned doll. The 4-year-old girl looked half her age due to the extreme thinness that consumed her delicate little body. Her torn and dirty clothes barely covered her pale skin, and her tangled hair fell over an angelic face marked by suffering. The man parked the car without thinking twice. His hurried footsteps echoed on the hot concrete as he approached the child, who remained motionless, her eyes closed and her breathing barely perceptible. When he knelt beside her, he could feel the heat of the fever emanating from her small, malnourished body. "Good Lord," he murmured, gently touching the girl's face. She slowly opened her eyes, revealing a piercing, intelligent gaze that contrasted drastically with her devastated appearance. For a few seconds, they stared at each other in silence, as if recognizing something familiar in one another. Without hesitation, the millionaire carried the child in his arms to his vehicle, feeling how she weighed almost nothing. Throughout the drive to his mansion in the suburbs, the girl remained awake, observing everything around her with a disturbing attentiveness for someone so young. Her large eyes captured every detail of the car's luxurious interior, every movement of the man who had saved her. The mansion stood majestically among carefully manicured gardens, its large windows reflecting the afternoon sun. As the electronic gate opened automatically, the girl lightly squeezed the millionaire's shirt, showing the first sign of emotion since she had been found. At the main entrance, an elegant woman awaited them with an expression that quickly changed from curiosity to poorly disguised irritation. The millionaire's wife, a sophisticated 28-year-old who had married him only 6 months earlier, observed the scene with calculating eyes. "What's this?" she asked, her refined voice laced with disdain as she adjusted her perfectly styled blonde hair. "I found this child passed out on the street," her husband explained, still holding the girl in his arms. "She needs urgent medical attention." The woman crossed her arms over her designer dress, her rigid posture revealing her deep displeasure. "You can't just bring anyone into our house. We know nothing about her, where she came from, what diseases she might have." "She's a child," he replied firmly, heading towards the main staircase. "A child who was starving and had a fever. I'm not going to argue about this now." The interior of the mansion was a spectacle of wealth and good taste. Italian marble covered the entrance floor, while crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling. Expensive works of art adorned the walls, and antique furniture made of noble wood completed the impeccable decor. The fortune accumulated through smart investments in Wall Street stocks was evident in every detail of the environment. The girl absorbed everything with her piercing eyes, as if she were memorizing every element of that completely new world. When she was placed in the guest room, decorated in soft tones and furnished with delicate pieces, she curled up on the king-size bed, looking even smaller amidst the immensity of the space. The family doctor was called immediately. After a careful examination, he diagnosed severe malnutrition, dehydration, and a respiratory infection that explained the high fever. "This child has been through extreme deprivation," the professional explained to the couple. "She will need constant care for the next few days." During the first few weeks, the routine of the mansion was completely altered. The millionaire hired a private nurse and cancelled several business appointments to monitor the girl's recovery. His wife, increasingly irritated with the situation, made snide remarks about the presence of the intruder in her perfect home. The child gradually began to strengthen. Her appetite slowly returned, and color came back to her pale cheeks. But what was most impressive was her capacity for observation. She remained quiet most of the time, absorbing every conversation, every gesture, every expression of the people around her. One afternoon, while the wife was talking on the phone in the garden, believing she was alone, the girl watched her discreetly from the bedroom window. The conversation seemed tense, full of whispers and furtive glances. The child noticed how the elegant woman constantly touched a necklace she wore, a nervous habit that only appeared during certain calls. "She's always watching," complained the sophisticated woman during dinner. "It's disturbing. A child shouldn't be staring at people like that. She's trying to understand the world," the husband defended. "Imagine the trauma she's been through. It's natural for her to be cautious. Natural would be for her to play, talk, act like a normal child," the wife retorted, delicately cutting a piece of salmon. "There's something strange about this girl." The girl, sitting at the table in a high chair specially brought in for her, listened to everything in silence. Her eyes moved between the two adults as if she were watching a tennis match, absorbing not only the words, but also the tones of voice, the facial expressions, the body language of each. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, the child quietly left the room. Her bare feet made no noise on the marble floor as she explored the corridors of the mansion. That's how she witnessed something that would change everything. The elegant woman, talking softly on the phone in the study, her voice filled with an intimacy that was definitely not directed at the husband sleeping upstairs. The following weeks brought subtle but significant changes to the dynamics of the mansion. The girl, now with more energy after intensive medical care, began to explore her new reality with a silent curiosity that deeply unsettled the millionaire's wife. Every morning, the child woke up before everyone else and wandered through the corridors, memorizing every corner of that house that seemed like a palace compared to the cold streets where she had lived. The millionaire, in turn, found himself genuinely attached to the little one. His days, previously filled only with financial market analysis and meetings on cryptocurrency investments, now included unexpectedly comforting moments. Helping the girl get dressed, accompanying her during meals, reading stories before bed. It was as if her presence had awakened a part of himself that had been buried along with his first wife. "You're getting too attached," warned the elegant woman one morning, as she watched her husband carefully cut an apple into small pieces for the child. "She's not our permanent responsibility. You should be looking for a suitable institution to take care of her." The man stopped cutting the fruit and stared at her with an expression she had never seen before. "She stays," he said simply, his voice filled with a determination that did not admit discussion. The tension in the air was palpable. The girl, sitting at the table, watched the exchange of glances between the two adults with an attention that went beyond her age. Her piercing eyes captured nuances that escaped most people, the way the woman pursed her lips when she was angry, how her hands trembled slightly when she was contradicted, how her gaze always averted when she talked about doing what was best for everyone. During lunch that same day, something happened that would change the course of everything. The family had received important visitors, a couple of investors interested in diversifying their assets into digital assets. The conversation flowed about Bitcoin, investment funds, and the fluctuations of the gold market when the girl, who until then had remained quiet in her chair, stood up abruptly. Her small steps echoed in the sudden silence of the dining room as she walked purposefully toward the main table. All eyes turned to her, the curious guests, the worried millionaire, and the visibly tense wife. The child stopped directly in front of the elegant woman, her large eyes fixed on her stepmother's pale face. "She has another husband," the girl declared with chilling clarity, her childish voice echoing through the luxurious environment like thunder. The silence that followed was deafening. Forks stopped in mid-air, conversation ceased completely, and everyone present was paralyzed by the unexpected statement. The sophisticated woman visibly paled, her hands trembling as she tried to force a smile. She's still recovering, she stammered, trying to downplay the situation. Traumatized children sometimes say nonsensical things. But the girl wasn't finished. With the same disturbing determination, she continued. I saw her kissing the dark-haired man. They meet in the small building near the park with the fountain. The millionaire felt as if the world had stopped spinning. His wife was now visibly panicking, trying to laugh nervously while muttering apologies to the embarrassed guests. The investors exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly wanting to be anywhere but there. Perhaps it would be better if we continued our conversation at another time, suggested one of the visitors, quickly rising from the table. After the guests' embarrassing departure, the atmosphere in the mansion became suffocating. The elegant woman followed her husband to the study, her high heels tapping furiously on the marble floor. Are you going to believe the fantasies of a troubled child? She attacked, her refined voice now laced with poorly disguised desperation. She clearly has serious psychological problems. She's making up stories, confusing reality with delusions. The millionaire remained silent for long minutes, processing what had happened. His mind went back to small details he had ignored, the whispered phone calls, the unexplained absences, the way his wife avoided certain areas of the city during their outings. What building near the park? He asked finally, his voice dangerously calm. There's no building, she replied too quickly, her words stumbling over each other. The girl is delirious. You yourself said she had a high fever for days. But something in the urgency of her denial only confirmed the suspicions that were beginning to form in her husband's mind. He remembered the park the girl had mentioned, a place where he used to go when visiting some of his investments downtown. There was indeed a modest residential building nearby, completely different from the luxurious lifestyle they shared. That night, after his wife took a sedative and fell asleep, the millionaire found the girl sitting by her bedroom window, looking at the stars. She didn't seem surprised by his presence, as if she were waiting for that conversation. Did you really see her with another man? He asked gently, sitting down next to the bed. The child nodded seriously, her large eyes reflecting a disturbing wisdom. Many times, before you found me. I slept near that park sometimes. They always met at the same time. Why did you say that today? The girl was silent for a moment, as if she were organizing complex thoughts in her childish mind. She doesn't like me, and she doesn't really like you either. I know when people really like you. The child's simple words hit the man like a painful revelation. During the months of marriage, he had attributed his wife's growing coldness to the period of adaptation, to the natural differences between personalities. But now, seeing through the innocent but perceptive eyes of the girl, he began to question everything. The next day, while his wife went out for what she called beauty appointments, the millionaire made a decision that would change his life forever. He drove to the park mentioned by the child, his heart pounding in his chest. What he would discover there could completely destroy the image he had of his marriage, but he needed to know the truth. The residential building was exactly as the girl had described, modest, discreet, located a few meters from the park with the fountain. When he asked the doorman about a blonde and elegant woman who frequented the place, the answer he received confirmed his worst fears. Oh yes, the woman from apartment 304. She's been coming here regularly for over a year, always with the same man. The doorman's revelation echoed in the millionaire's mind all the way back home. His hands trembled on the steering wheel as he processed the devastating information. His wife had been maintaining a secret apartment for over a year, long before they even got married. The fortune he had built through years of hard work and strategic investments in various assets now seemed like a golden trap that had attracted someone with completely different intentions than he had imagined. When he arrived at the mansion, he found the child playing alone in the garden, her movements still fragile but visibly stronger than weeks ago. She looked up when she saw him approaching, and in that penetrating gaze he saw an understanding that went far beyond her 4 years of age. "You went there," she said simply, not as a question, but as a statement. He sat on the grass next to her, something he would never do under normal circumstances, considering his designer suit. "How did you know so much about them?" The girl continued drawing in the dirt with a stick, creating shapes that resembled birds flying. "When you don't have a home, you learn to see things that people do when they think no one is watching. They always came at the same time, always did the same things, and she always looked at her cell phone afterwards, as if she were waiting for someone to call." The child's words painted an increasingly clear picture of premeditated betrayal. The millionaire began to recall his wife's behaviors that now took on new meaning. The whispered phone calls she quickly ended when he entered the room, the prolonged absences justified with vague appointments, the way she always knew details about places in the city that he had never mentioned visiting. That afternoon, when his wife returned from her appointments, the man decided to subtly test her. During dinner, he casually mentioned having passed by Central Park during the day. "Which park?" she asked, but her voice carried a tension that did not go unnoticed. "The one with the Bethesda fountain. I thought about buying an apartment nearby as an investment," he lied, carefully observing her reaction. The woman almost knocked over her wine glass, her hands visibly trembling. "Why? Why would you buy something in that area? It's such a common neighborhood, so different from our standard of living." "Exactly for that reason. Portfolio diversification," he replied, keeping his voice casual. "Real estate in popular areas can have good returns." The conversation died there, but the heavy silence that followed spoke louder than 1,000 words. The girl, sitting at the table, watched the exchange with her piercing eyes, as if she were watching pieces of a puzzle slowly falling into place. In the following days, the millionaire began a discreet investigation. He used his contacts in the financial world to find out more about the apartment, feigning interest in real estate investments in the area. What he discovered made him nauseous. The property was registered in his wife's name for 15 months, acquired just 2 weeks after their first meeting at an elegant social event. The calculating coldness behind that discovery was terrifying. His wife had planned everything from the beginning, to meet him, to win him over, to marry him, all while maintaining a parallel relationship. The apartment was not just a meeting place, it was physical proof that he had been manipulated from the first moment. Determined to discover the full extent of the betrayal, the man decided to hire a discreet private investigator. In recent years, his investments in diversified funds and applications in euros had significantly multiplied his wealth, and now part of that money would be used to uncover the truth about his own life. While awaiting the results of the investigation, the tension in the house grew day by day. His wife seemed increasingly nervous, making constant comments about the need to find a suitable solution for the girl. Her suggestions ranged from expensive boarding schools to foster families in other cities, always emphasizing the importance of recovering the couple's privacy. "She's interfering in our marital life," she argued during a particularly tense discussion. "A child needs structure, routine, a normal family. She can't continue living like a permanent house guest." The millionaire watched these attempts at manipulation with growing clarity. His wife wasn't worried about the girl's well-being. She wanted to eliminate her because the child had become an inconvenient witness to her secrets. One morning, while his wife left for another of her mysterious appointments, the investigator called with a preliminary report that confirmed his worst fears. The man who frequented the secret apartment was a mid-level employee of an accounting firm, completely financially dependent on the woman the millionaire called his wife. "There's something more," said the investigator. "I discovered records of frequent calls between them dating back long before your marriage. And there's more. He has a history of relationships with wealthy women, 3 documented cases in the last 10 years. Reality hit the millionaire like a punch to the gut. His wife and her lover were experienced con artists, and he had been just another victim in a series of elaborate schemes. All the romance, all the passion he believed he had experienced had been a carefully orchestrated staging to gain access to his fortune. That afternoon, he decided to confront the situation once and for all. He pretended to plan an urgent business trip, telling his wife that he would leave the next morning and return only at the end of the week. She could barely disguise the relief in her eyes. "Too bad you can't come with me this time," he said, watching her reaction. "Oh, you know how I hate last-minute trips," she replied quickly. "Besides, someone needs to stay and take care of the girl." But the millionaire had already hired the housekeeper to take care of the child during his fake absence. In fact, he planned to stay hidden in a nearby hotel, observing his wife's movements through the mansion's security system that she didn't know he had remote access to. The night before his supposed departure, the girl sought him out in his study. She had developed the habit of appearing silently when she sensed he was troubled, as if her childish instinct captured emotional turmoil that adults tried to hide. "Are you going to find out more bad things about her?" asked the child, her tiny voice filled with a disturbing wisdom. "Why do you ask that?" "Because you have the same face I used to have when I lived on the streets and knew something bad was going to happen," she replied, climbing onto his lap with the naturalness of a true daughter. At that moment, the millionaire understood something fundamental. Regardless of what he discovered about his wife, regardless of how much his marital life crumbled, that extraordinary child had become the most important thing in his existence. She had brought truth to a world built on lies, and he would do anything to protect her. "No matter what happens," he said, hugging her gently, "you will always have a home with me." The girl snuggled against his chest, and for the first time since she had been found on the streets, she smiled genuinely. It was a smile that lit up her entire small face and promised better days, even if devastating storms were approaching on the horizon. The millionaire's plan unfolded exactly as he had predicted. The next morning, he ostensibly left for his business trip, taking only a small suitcase and driving to the airport to keep up appearances. His wife said goodbye at the door with kisses that he now recognized as completely false, her eyes shining with an anxiety barely disguised as longing. From the discreet hotel where he settled, the man remotely accessed the mansion's security cameras through his laptop. What he witnessed in the next few hours surpassed even his most pessimistic expectations about the extent of the betrayal. Just 2 hours after his departure, his wife was on the phone, her lively voice echoing through the hallways of the house. "He left just now. Yes, all week. You can come whenever you want." The transformation in her personality was shocking. The elegant and reserved woman had disappeared, replaced by someone genuinely happy for the first time in months. At 3 in the afternoon, a dark-haired man of common appearance arrived at the mansion, driving a modest car that contrasted drastically with the luxurious environment. The millionaire immediately recognized the description the investigator had provided. Through the cameras, he watched his wife receive the visitor with a passion she had never shown him, kissing him intensely right at the main entrance. What followed was a cruel staging of the life the millionaire believed he had with his wife. The two walked through the house as true owners, examining expensive objects, laughing at intimate comments about the idiot husband who paid for everything. The lover even sampled some of his most expensive wines, toasting sarcastically to the sucker who supports our good life. But it was during a conversation in the library that the most devastating truth came to light. The millionaire adjusted the volume of the sound system, capturing every word of the conversation that would change his complete understanding of the situation. "How long do you think we can keep this up?" asked the dark-haired man, leafing through a book on Bitcoin investments that was on the table. "As long as necessary," replied the woman, caressing his face. "The lawyer said that if I can maintain the marriage for 2 years, I will be entitled to a significant portion of his assets in case of divorce. And considering he has applications in dollars, investment funds, and even a gold reserve, we're talking about a considerable fortune." "What if he finds out about us before then?" The woman laughed with a coldness that chilled the millionaire's blood. "He's a lonely and needy man. He lost his first wife and was desperate for company when I met him. Men like that are easy to manipulate, especially when you know exactly what they want to hear." "What about the girl? She's complicating things." The woman's expression hardened visibly. "That pest needs to get out of our life. She's too observant, too smart for a child. If she stays here, she's going to end up causing problems. Do you have a plan?" "I'm working on it. I'm going to convince him that she needs specialized care, maybe a boarding school for children with trauma. The important thing is to get her out of here before she says anything else inconvenient." The millionaire felt a fury he had never experienced burning in his chest. It wasn't enough to discover that he had been deceived from the beginning. Now he knew that those two criminals planned to get rid of the only pure and true person who had entered his life. As he watched the cruel staging continue in his own house, a part of his mind was already formulating a counterattack plan. His years in the business world had taught him that the best revenge was always served with irrefutable evidence and lasting legal consequences. The next day, pretending to still be traveling, the millionaire returned discreetly to the city and went to the office of his personal lawyer. He took with him all the recordings from the security cameras, the reports from the private investigator, and documents detailing all the assets his wife might try to claim. "She planned everything from the beginning," he explained to the lawyer, an experienced man who had followed the construction of his wealth over the years. "The marriage was a fraud from day one." The lawyer examined the evidence with growing disbelief. "With this evidence, not only can you annul the marriage for fraud, but you can also prosecute her criminally for attempted fraud. And considering there is evidence of premeditation and an organized network, the consequences will be severe." "I want her to lose everything," said the millionaire, his voice filled with an iron determination. "I want her to face the full legal consequences of her actions. But above all, I want to ensure that the girl is protected. About the child, do you want to initiate a formal adoption process?" For the first time in days, the man smiled genuinely. "Yes, she saved me from a lifetime of lies. It's time for me to save her too." On the third day of his supposed trip, the millionaire returned to the mansion in a dramatic and unexpected way. He had coordinated his arrival to coincide exactly with an intimate moment between his wife and her lover, based on the patterns he had observed through the cameras. When he opened the door of the living room and found the two embraced on the couch where he had so often relaxed after difficult days of work, the shock on their faces was instant and gratifying. The woman he had called his wife paled completely, while the man tried to hide behind the silk cushions. "Surprise," said the millionaire, his calm voice contrasting with the storm of emotions he felt. "My meeting ended earlier." What followed was an explosive confrontation that echoed throughout the mansion. Shouts, accusations, desperate attempts at denial, mixed in a cacophony of truths finally exposed. The woman tried to turn the situation around, accusing her husband of espionage and paranoia, but the evidence was too irrefutable. It was during the height of the discussion that the girl appeared at the top of the main staircase, observing everything with her piercing eyes. When the woman saw her, her mask of civility fell completely. "This is your fault," she screamed, pointing at the child. "You and your disturbed little girl lies. You destroyed my life." "The only thing she destroyed were your lies," replied the millionaire, climbing the stairs to protect the girl. "And now you both are going to face the legal consequences of everything you've done." In the days that followed, the complete truth came to light through official investigations. The con artist couple had deceived 3 other wealthy people in the last 5 years, always using the same method. She seduced lonely and rich men while maintaining the true relationship with her accomplice, planning fraudulent marriages to divide assets. The legal process was swift and decisive. With the evidence provided by the millionaire, both were convicted of marital fraud, attempted fraud, and criminal organization. The woman lost any right to her husband's assets and was still required to pay compensation for the moral damages caused. But the most significant transformation occurred in the relationship between the millionaire and the girl who had saved his life from an elaborate lie. The formal adoption process was initiated immediately, and in a few months she officially became his legal daughter. The child gradually began to flourish in an environment of genuine love and true security. Her exceptional intelligence, previously used for survival on the streets, was now channeled into discovering the world through books, toys, and experiences that a 4-year-old girl should have. 6 months after the revelation of the truth, father and daughter were in the garden of the mansion, she playing with expensive dolls, while he reviewed reports of his new investments in sustainable stocks. The afternoon was quiet, filled with the peace that only genuine honesty can bring. "Daddy," said the girl, using for the first time the word he had so long hoped to hear, "are you happy now?" The man looked at that extraordinary child who had transformed his life so profoundly and smiled with a happiness he hadn't felt in years. "Happier than I ever thought possible," he replied, hugging her with all the love that a true father can feel. And so, a girl who had started life on the cruelest streets of the big city found not only a home, but a real family. Her unique ability to see through the masks that people wore had saved not only herself, but also the man who became her true father, proving that sometimes life's greatest treasures arrive disguised in the most unexpected forms. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story, giving it a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.